good evening. This is the Larkspur Landing Property Committee of the Ross County Sanitary District. And this is the first time that Pam and I have met as a committee since we were appointed, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. We've got an agenda. We may not have enough agendas for everyone, but what we're going to do is I'll explain what's on the agenda for those who don't have an agenda. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this meeting to order, do the normal Pledge of Allegiance, there it is there, and then we have an agenda. What we need to do is we're going to add to the agenda appoint chair of this committee, either Pam or myself, and then add an open time for folks who want to speak on an issue that's not specifically listed on the agenda. We can't take any action, but we can hear any concerns or comments you might have on issues not on this agenda. So, if you'll join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our roll call is going to show Pam Meggs and Frank Ager present. Pam Meggs and myself, Frank Ager, we're two of your elected officials for the Ross County Sanitary District. So we represent you on this board. And it's a 5-person board. And the purpose of this meeting tonight is to have some initial comments and recommendations to the full board, which is going to meet on next Wednesday night, the 23rd, here at this meeting hall. The full board will meet, and we're going to have a recommendation to that board as to the direction we recommend the district goes as far as how to respond to the draft environmental impact report for the Larkspur Landing stationary plan. We have with us tonight our general manager, Greg Norby. Greg is here. He's our new general manager. He knows a lot about sewers, a lot about water, so he's an excellent resource. So feel free to ask questions and get answers. And we have Randall Ishii, who is our #1 engineer for the sanitary district. He's here this evening to answer any questions you might have or questions we as board members might have. So we have on the agenda is call the meeting to order, approve the agenda, discussion and direction of district review and comment on the draft EIR for the City of Larkspur stationary plan. And then there's an ABC, stationary plan details, the wastewater utility services, and that's an issue for us, capacity, etc. Sequent draft EIR for the stationary plant analysis and conclusions related to wastewater utility services, an issue for us, and consideration of retaining outside consultant services for the stationary plant and draft environmental impact review. We'll talk about those issues. And then discussion of the next meeting that this committee may have. We need to add tonight to this agenda selection of chair of this committee tonight, and then add an open time. So if that seems reasonable, I don't know. Is there a motion in a second?
I nominate Frank Ager for chair of the standing Larkspur.
Well, let's first just add these two items. We're going to add chair, selection of chair of the committee, #1, and #2, and add an open time. So is there a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of those two items?
Yes.
So, okay, and I'll second that motion.
That's right.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. 2. Oh, opposed? No. That's it. Pretty easy with a committee of 2. Okay, so here we go. We call the meeting to order, and on the agenda, first thing we're going to do is select the chair of the committee. Pam, do you have a motion? You'd like?
Make a motion that Director Ager be the chair for the Larkspur Landing Property Committee. It's a standing committee, so that means there will be no minutes and notes. And tonight we're doing a video, right?
And everything will be done in public.
Yeah.
An ad hoc committee meets in private. We're a standing committee. We'll be meeting in public. That's a different thing. So I'll second the motion. Is there any comment or questions from the audience on the motion at all? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. So, yeah, I'll chair it. That's easy. Next is an open time. So if anyone has any questions about issues around the Ross Valley Sanitary District, please ask them now. Remember, we can't take action tonight, but we could refer your comments or questions to the general manager, and he could report back at a later date, please. And just for the record, just please identify yourself, your name and your town. That's all we need.
Well, my name is Craig Smith, and I'm not in your district, and I'm from Tam Valley. And one of my concerns I have with the special districts, and particularly since you have a new general manager, is from an accounting point of view. I think that much of the financial mess that we find ourselves in Marin County comes from the fact that, at least from what I see in governmental accounting, I studied primarily accounting in the private sector. There is a lack of acknowledgement of depreciation of capital assets. And as a consequence, there's a great deficiency in terms of the actual financial position going into the future of these districts. And so we end up finding ourselves in a position after many years where we have exhausted prior capital improvements, but at the same time not actually honestly develop a funding pool to take care of those capital improvements. And then all of a sudden, ratepayers, as many ratepayers are facing throughout the county now, are faced with having to bear the brunt of a sudden increase in their fee payments to compensate for the, I would say, the accounting deficiencies that occurred in the past. And one of the things I would highly like to recommend is some more honesty in accounting going forward, to develop a our funding pool reflecting the actual real depreciation, wear and tear on the capital equipment, so that when the future came, the kind of desperation that is occurring currently in your district and many other districts does not have to occur. And we'd have a sounder footing, generally speaking, on an ongoing basis in your financials.
Okay, thank you. We receive a monthly finance report from our finance department. And it's supposed to take into consideration depreciation and the value of the assets. And that value changes. But maybe we need to take another look at that. As I said, every month we have a financial report that includes expenditures, includes depreciation, includes revenues, et cetera. We try to keep it up to date. But the depreciation issue is something we can take a look at. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? If not, then we're going to go. Yes,
and
please.
I just want to add,
okay.
We have a standing finance committee that myself and Peter Sullivan on, and we meet 2 days before our regular board meeting, which is an open meeting to the public, and you're welcome to join us.
Yeah.
It's usually 4 o'clock on Monday.
Yes.
Just for general
We just did your name and your town.
Pam Drew, Nevada. Would you please tell us about the cleanup efforts for these ponds right here at 2000 Larkspur Landing?
Well, Larkspur
Circle
Landing.
that you've
Well,
undertaken
we're going to get into that. We're going to get into
so
that this
that would be
evening.
part of the report?
It's not part of the report, but we're going to talk about it because we own the land. And
So you will fill us in on
we will.
all that you have done to clean up those ponds?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think those ponds have been filled in, haven't they?
Yes.
And, unbeknownst to the board, they were filled in. But anyway, we're trying to
But
fill
the
it.
board is liable for it.
We'll get into that. Thank you. Oh, yes, comment here, please.
Kathleen Mulcahy, City of Larkspur.
Thank you.
A few questions. Your district, what is its current capacity as far as sewage load?
Well, we talked about that because we just we've just approved a new plan, in effect, as to how we're going to deal with all of the issues around our operation. From Fairfax to San Quentin, we have a number of deficiencies. The plan that we adopted did not specifically deal with capacity issues, but we're going to talk about this evening.
So we'll postpone that question. The second question, how much more will you be in this development that you'll be talking about in the area of the 2,000 Larkspur landing circle? How much more do you anticipate meeting as far as capacity with the proposed plan?
Well, we don't have the answers for you, but we're going to talk about that tonight. I think a capacity is a legitimate issue that needs to be addressed by this agency, especially with the potential for development here throughout the Lost Valley, not just Larkspur, but throughout the rest of the Lost Valley.
So the district site that you're responsible for, is there underground aquifers at that site?
I think we're doing
Okay, we're going to talk about that. I don't know, but let's talk about that when we get some testimony, when we discuss some of the issues with the 10 acres of land. The public owns that land. We're just the folks that you elect to oversee the land.
Right, and these are
But
the
it's publicly
questions.
owned property,
These are the
and we need to
questions
know,
asked.
we need to know all the answers.
So do you have those answers? I'm understanding that you're shaking your head yes, and you're saying we'll get to it. So are there answers?
Well, let's go through this agenda a bit, and
But this is our
if your
only
questions
time.
aren't answered through this process, then you can chime in at any time and say, what about that? We're going to talk specifically about our 10 acres. We're talking about the capacity of the system. We're going to talk about the ability of this system to properly collect and transport the sewage, this wastewater that's going to come out of any future development. That's part of the agenda tonight.
So Frank, this is not our only opportunity to ask questions, so if we have questions about Larkspur Landing, there will be another opportunity.
So the full board will meet next Wednesday night right here.
But I mean tonight.
Tonight, this is not going, this open time is for something that's not on this agenda.
Perfect.
What's on the agenda is a stationary plan, the 10 acres that we own, you and all of us own in Larkspur, and potential capacity and our ability to handle the wastewater that is generated from any new development. That's all on the table.
it. And we are responding to the draft EIR, which is coming up soon to be sealed. So that's primarily when.
Well, exactly. We have just a limited time to comment, and we need to get comments into the city of Larkspur. All of these cities are under the gun from ABAG, the Association of Area Governments, and the State Housing Authority to provide new housing. It's not just Larkspur, it's Fairfax, it's San Anselmo, it's Mill Valley, it's Nevada. They're all under the gun. So what's happening is the cities are reacting to ABAG and the State Housing Authority and trying to comply. At the same time, there's issues that we as service providers have to deal with. And that's what we're going to try to have some comments to the draft environmental impact report so that we can let folks in Larkspur know some of the issues that we have to deal with that they might not be aware of.
I want to add that I'm very happy to see all of you here tonight. It's a great group. We usually don't get that many. And this is absolutely wonderful to see you and get feedback. So go ahead, Ray.
You know, we're lucky if we get two folks in the public depending on our meeting. It's like no one ever, we go, is there any public comment? And no one answers because there's no one from the public out there. Okay, question over here, yes. And just your name and your town, that's all we need. For identification.
Joe DiScala, San Anselmo.
Okay.
My question is I received a 4-page document in the mail kind of noticing this and summarizing this meeting. My question is, who wrote that?
Well, we have an agenda.
No, not the agenda, the 4-page.
Are you talking about the Prop 218?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the 218 notice.
There was a 4-page notice.
In the mail?
Yes.
That's different than tonight's meeting. That's an issue that may be discussed on April 23rd. I'm not sure if we're going to discuss that or not. But
That was
that's
a rate notice. Who wrote that?
that's a rate notice. That came from our district.
I know. Who's the person that wrote it?
Oh.
I wrote most of it.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, it's a staff effort. So, but as they pointed out, I mean, it's a significant topic in its own right, and I'm happy to talk about it at any point.
Sign them.
We're good.
Okay, that's all, that was my question.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on then. We've got a chair, it's Frank here. Overtime we finished, okay. Discussion and direction of district review and comment on the draft EIR for the City of Larkspur Station Area Plan. And we've got the 15, I think it's about 15 pages, the Larkspur Draft Station Area Plan Executive Summary. And it talks about a number of issues. So we could probably kind of quickly go through that to let you know the kinds of issues that we're looking at.
And to add, the document is 433 pages. So, that's all I'm saying.
We don't have all 433 pages with us tonight. We just have the executive summary. But just some basic concepts that we have to address since we're service providers for any new development that's going to occur, not only in Larkspur, but throughout the Ross Valley.
Who wrote the executive summary?
Oh, I have no idea. This is from the city of Larkspur. You know, that's a comment there, please?
Linda Sisler, Kenfield, and Larkspur. How do we stop it?
I'm sorry?
How do we stop the project?
Well, tonight, it's a good question, but tonight, that is not our role this evening. Our role this evening is to alert you as to what we're looking at, how to address the issues, how to address the draft environmental impact report. So if you have an elected city council in Larkspur, that is going to make the final decisions. It's not us. We've got to address the issues of wastewater collection and transport and capacity, and the 10 acres of land that we, all of us, own, the public land at Larkspur Landing, 2000 Larkspur Landing. It's the site of the old sewer treatment plant that was owned by Ross Valley Sanitary District. That plant was basically buried. Instead of hauling it out, they collapsed it and buried it and covered it over.
Well, if we own it,
Yes, we own it.
if we public own it, then why can't we say to you, as our representatives, we don't want you to do this?
Oh, you can, absolutely. That's okay. I thought you meant the whole
Well, the whole-
stationary plant.
Well, you know, the big part of the plan is the 900 units they're planning to put on that property.
Well, they only want to put 250 on our property. But we'll get it, let's get into that. Let's get into
So
that.
let's let Frank go through this in a systematic way, and we'll totally open it up. And just to also let you know, usually it's a 3-minute speaking, just to talk, if you could.
So the project background, of course, we've got the station area plan. It's located, all the basic development is located in the Larkspur landing area, with the exception, I think, of 50 dwelling units, 70 dwelling units, which would be over here in Greenbrae on the water there.
Drake's Landing.
Drake's Landing. Yes, thank you. This came about, this is Larkspur's plan, Larkspur's proposal. And I'm sure they're not wed to this. This is a process that's taking place in Larkspur. And there will be they're soliciting your ideas also on the whole station area plan. Not just our little portion of the 10 acres and the capacity of our wastewater collection system. So, again, Association of Area Governments seems to have a hand in most of this planning effort. They offer grants to cities, some small, some large. I think Fairfax is getting a $300,000 grant that they approve, ABAGs, quotas, and housing element. Larkspur, I think, is getting like almost $600,000 if they're going as they go through this planning process. So we're looking at this draft environmental impact report to try to present some comments to the city of since we're kind of an integral part of the stationary plan, we need to address it now in the draft environmental impact report so that we have the opportunity to make more, maybe some more in-depth comments at the final draft, the final environmental impact report statement process at the end. I don't think that in the next week we're going to be able to come up with everything we need to come up with to address the issues of the stationary plan. But we can get some preliminary issues on the table, get them to the full board, and so that discussion can take place at the next meeting, April 23rd here at this facility.
Hi, Jerry's Hoglola, Kent Woodlands.
Okay.
This may seem like a very naive question, might be, but is there going to be a black and white issue here? Are we going to say, would the Ross Valley District ever say, you know, we can't support this?
Well,
Our
okay.
systems can't support it. So you can go ahead all you want in planning, but there's going to be no water and no sewage because we can't do it. Or will you say we'll organize ourselves to do it?
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Or Frank,
We're
even
going to talk about that.
Joan Bennett, Kentfield, even if we can handle, if the capacity is such that it can handle it, can we nonetheless submit from the Ross Valley Sanitary District on behalf of all the ratepayers and residents in Ross Valley a recommendation that despite the fact that we may be able to have the capacity for it, we don't want it, period.
That's a full board decision. It is.
And we also, because of the time element, I'm going to ask, and this is kind of later tonight in this meeting, is we need a consultant to help us review the EIR house. But there is when's the last date? When's the end date?
I think
June 2nd.
June
June
2nd.
2nd.
And from what Greg told me, we can ask for an extension, is that correct?
it's always an option for the EIR.
So you could ask for an extension.
Frank,
Okay.
here's another naive question. Have you sold it yet? And do you have developers knocking at your door to buy this land, which belongs to all of us? I mean, has it been sold?
Number one, it has not been sold. In fact,
Okay.
the board, as it's constituted today, we took the land back as part of an out-of-court settlement in end of 2010, beginning of 2011. The district paid $4.7 million to a developer for an out-of-court settlement. The developer had made a down payment of $500,000 to the district to buy that, like, I don't know, 10 years before. I wasn't around. I wasn't on the board. I wasn't part of it. We got the land back. We paid $4.7 million in out-of-court settlement, and we got the land back. This board, the current board, the previous board, and the current board, since the land reverted back to Ross Valley Sanitary District, has never discussed what they believe should happen to the land in the end. And we've talked about, well, maybe someday we'll sell it and we'll get X amount of dollars and be able to fix pipes with it, et cetera. But the decision has not been made by the board, number one. Number two, what was your second question?
Well, my name is Genevieve Ames and I live in Larkspur.
Okay.
My second question is,
So no
do you
decision
have
has been
developers
made on-
knocking on the door? that
Yes, they
are-
are.
Yes,
they
do.
are. Yes, they are.
And I guess I would follow up with, are you going to consult with we, the owners of the land, before you even talk to the developer to see what we want to do? Do we
Well,
have a
that's
vote in
kind of
it?
one of the reasons this meeting is taking place tonight.
No, but will
To
that
give you
happen?
an opportunity to tell us what you think. I mean,
But what will happen? Who will make the decision that
the
you're going to
board,
settle
the
in?
board will make the decision in the end. You're elected board. You elect all of us. You elect five
So
of us.
do you ask us first what we want?
Well, that's why we're starting this process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Robert, down there in Larkspur, did you ask us before when you sold it 10 years ago?
You know, I wasn't here. I wasn't on the board.
Just saying,
I-
historically, it looked like it didn't happen. I was here 10 years ago. I don't remember the issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they asked you or not.
And since we bought the land back, it
so-
looks like we bought our own property.
Right, now
So today's board is not the old board, and the reason we were holding this meeting tonight is to hear from you, to hear what you think. That's what it's all about. You may have not got this chance 10 years ago, but you're going to get it now. Someone back here had a question.
Yes, my name is Mimi Willard, and I live in Kentfield. And I think Jerry Calderon asked a very good question, which is, what if there's not enough capacity? I serve on the Kent Woodlands Property Owners Association, and we had a representative from your board, your president of your board, who came to our last meeting. And we asked her, is there enough capacity, and what happens if there's not capacity? And we were reassured unequivocally that there is sufficient capacity. So if you're telling me those studies haven't been done, I'm a little concerned that that there's a right-hand, left-hand problem.
Okay, you have to remember there's 5 board members, and each board member sees this whole operation a little differently.
Right.
So you may get different answers depending on who you talk to about the capacity issues.
I understand.
And we need to address the capacity issues. We touched on them a little bit, we really haven't addressed the capacity issues.
Well, and respectfully,
at,
Frank, I think that what we're asking for is for the sanitary district to provide data instead of opinions.
That's why we're here tonight.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So,
Susan
first.
Name and town.
Mill Valley. I just wonder, can your general manager comment on that to have information to answer that question?
Well,
Yes.
in fact, I had asked them specifically the question, and it's not really clear about our capacity.
Well,
Go
can
ahead.
I make actually just a general procedural comment? We're pretty much into the thick of the topic, and this was supposed to be for other topics, so it might, you guys are asking a bunch of great questions that are why they're of the topic this evening, so do you want to shift towards having people come and ask these questions?
I think the people should be able to ask whatever they want.
Well, we're just going to try to get this question answered on the capacity issue. How do you see it, Greg? Do we have more work to do?
So you're specifically asking about the capacity impacts of the proposed development for the stationary plan. The district has not done an independent evaluation of that. We have an evaluation that was done by the team that conducted the draft environmental impact report. So these are their figures. And what they did was they looked at current indoor water use in that area using Marin Municipal Water District records and other average water uses for those land use types in the area. And then what they did was they applied those unit water uses to the proposed development levels and developed their estimates of what wastewater generation levels would look like under the proposed development. And it's important to look at this in kind of maybe at two levels. And the reason why is, as some of you are probably more familiar with the wastewater district, our flows in the system, they vary greatly with wet weather. So during dry weather conditions, we are now conveying about 4.8 million gallons a day of wastewater. But during wet weather, that can go up anywhere from 10 to 15-fold. So during a big storm cycle, we might be moving more like 50 or 60 million gallons a day of wastewater due to the infiltration and inflow issue. So it's really the I&I issue that drives capacity for the wastewater system. It's much, much less influenced by the
Greg, just explain what I&I is,
thank
please.
you. I'll try to avoid acronyms. It's inflow and infiltration. And what it is it's things like stormwater coming in from manholes, it's illegal storm drain connections from private properties. It's a common industry problem. It's not unique to Ross Valley by any stretch. But the end result is that on an average annual basis, about 40% of all the wastewater that's conveyed by our system and treated and sent out by CMSA is essentially stormwater, to call it generally, because it's in the system inadvertently and unintentionally. So the takeaway from that is it's not so much the base demands that govern the system capacity, it's almost entirely the stormwater-driven I&I flows, because they spike by 10 to 15-fold over the base dry weather flows. So that's just to give you a little bit of context for the numbers I'm about to give you. Our average flows, again, are about 4.8 million gallons a day, and they can go up to 50 to 60 MGD during storms. So the Larkspur Landing area development, these are the the EIR, draft EIR numbers I'm about to give you, we haven't independently assessed this. They are estimating wastewater flows in that area of about, I think about 90,000 gallons a day. And they're looking at, they're estimating under the maximum level of development that the plan has outlined, about a threefold increase in that to about 270,000 gallons a day. So to put that in context, again, during big storms, we're moving upwards of 50 million gallons a day. So the short answer to your question is that the draft EIR's assessment has found that there's no significant impact to wastewater capacity from the proposed level of development. Now that's their conclusion, and we haven't independently looked at that yet, but I hope that answers the general question.
Can I ask a technical question?
Is the chair, please?
Say that?
Yeah, you could ask
Yes.
through the chair.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question to the manager as to the differential between stormwater, which is unlikely to carry the same level of toxins as toilet water. And so, the question I have is, not knowing much about sanitation mechanics, is there a filtering process? And the question we have, I think many people probably are thinking, in this 200,000 additional gallons of water, this is not the same as like the water that's coming down through the sewer. This is going to be filled with human waste toxins. Is the filtration system that filters these particular kinds of toxins going to be up to this additional burden?
Okay, the filtration is going to be handled by the Central Sanitation Agency. It's not going to be us. We're just going to move the water. We're going to pump it. We're going to move it over to Center Fill.
Oh.
Now, another area that our system is susceptible to is sea level rise and saltwater intrusion, because we've got a lot of pipes in the ground here, and high tide, that water is infiltrating our system. And that's one of the reasons we're having to replace a lot of these pipes in the low-lying areas, because the salt water is getting in. It's a combination of things. But let's, Greg, see if Greg wants to add anything to that, to your question.
No, I think you covered it. The CMSA wastewater treatment plant is, we're one member of the three-member JPA, and your rates do support that treatment plant, and that's what they're there for. They do the filtration and the treatment of the flows that we convey to the plant. Specifically, they have upgraded that plant. I think in round numbers, between 2006 and 2008, there was about a $60 million investment in the wastewater treatment plant to allow it to more effectively handle the wet weather peak floods. So in general, the capacity, they've intended for the capacity to be there for the wet weather flows. The details of the constituent filtering and so forth, I can't really advance.
Right here at Elk Village. Yes, please.
Yes.
Just your name and your town.
My name is Gloria Newmeyer. I live in Kentfield. I am curious to what extent, even though you are a sanitary district board, you are interested in the ramifications of your decision about your property is going to have in other areas. And you mentioned specifically the executive summary, which I have here, page 8. Deals with circulation and parking, and it says specifically that obviously these new land uses would generate additional traffic on the congested roadway. I believe they're referring to Great Boulevard, and it is unclear how much benefit that these modifications that are under study will provide to the roadway congestion. And I think many of us who are here tonight are stakeholders in Great Boulevard. And what you do, aside from the congestion to the water pipe system, I believe is more important to what you do to add to the congestion, which is already impossible on Great Boulevard.
Okay, so we could talk about that for a second here. The other day, I had to run into Corte Madera, and I went down Doherty, and then went down, what's the main street that runs by Winnie Cup down there?
Hamel Vista.
Down by-
Hamel Vista.
Hamel Vista.
Hamel Vista.
Hamel Vista. It took like 3 signal changes to go a block and a half. The traffic was backed up way up here in Larkspur, from Corte Madera. So I mean, you know, the issues of traffic is something that our cities, not only Larkspur, but all of us here have to deal with. And we as property owners in Larkspur Landing area need to be looking at it also. But tonight, we're not specifically looking at traffic and parking. What's interesting is Senate Bill 743 has passed.
Right.
And 743 exempts issues of water supply, traffic, and parking from environmental impact reports from transit TODs, transit-oriented developments, they're EIRs. So it's a combination of things going on here. It's not just your Larkspur City Council or your Ross Valley Sanitary District. The state is also forcing these communities, our cities and our towns, to do things that they may not have normally done in the past. But, so, you know, we'll touch on parking a little bit when we talk about our property. About our property. Well, but our main thrust tonight is the EIR report, our capacity, our ability to handle the sewage that's going to be generated, the wastewater that's going to be generated from that future development, and the 10 acres of land that we, all of us, own at Larkspur Landing. So there's a question over here, yes, and I'm sorry, please go ahead and I'll get the clerk. Lady the clerk.
Okay, my name is Laura Effel. I live in Larkspur. I'm one of the ratepayers. When you say that the treatment of the sewage is done by Central Marin and not by this agency,
yes.
Is Central Marin Sanitary Agency going to be asked for an environment to respond to the environmental impact report?
You know, I sit on that board also as a representative from Ross Valley, and I don't think we, as an agency, Central Marin Sanitation Agency, has been asked to respond to the draft environmental impact report.
Central Marin hasn't? So there's nobody who,
well,
the appropriate person is not being asked to respond.
Okay, here, please, their report, it says they have contacted both Central Marin Sanitation Agency and the Ross Valley Sanitary District and have been assured that both of them can handle the wastewater.
Who said that?
That's in their report. That's a consultant.
But you don't need a consultant, you need Central Marin Sanitary Agency, don't you?
Well, let's find out if CMSA has been asked to comment on the draft. Right here, yes.
Terry Jaberka with Greenbrae, and it was really the same question. I just was wanting to know what kind of alignment. I mean, it seems like, okay, we can do our thing and we'll just push it down the line with no consideration about down the line. And if you're sitting on both boards, you know, what kind of effort are you going to make to, you know, bring them up to speed or ensure that they have the capacity or are able to handle that capacity and just not say, okay, well, we can do it. I mean, where's the thought and care about what, that's what's happening around here. Everybody's just acting in these silos and nobody's working, you know, in concert together to make this all
It's a good point. Integrating the agencies is huge. It's huge.
just to have some consultant to say, you know.
Well,
doing it, I don't know.
just to,
It's
the
worrisome.
reason I brought up consultant is, you know, we see it from our point of view, and just to have someone to give us some professional feedback. I'm not asking for their decision, but being a planning commissioner in the past, I want to be really 100% sure what I'm looking at and doing. I need that.
It just concerns me that we have a board here representing us, and you are actually a representative of the central, and it just doesn't seem like there's any unity or crossover there.
What you're seeing tonight is a meeting with two of your elected representatives, Pam Banks and myself. And this is kind of the initial foray for us into the draft environmental impact report for the stationary plant. Now, I think it came too late or whatever, but we are doing it.
I think there is some information. I just could not read the whole thing. I spent about 3 or 4 hours on it. there is some reference, I believe, in that EIR draft about CMSA, but I don't think it's real specific and real measurable, if I remember right, but I have to look at it again.
Okay, quickly here, yes.
Robert Meltner, Larkspur again. A lot of this discussion sounds to me like a planning meeting in Larkspur, where I go now and then, where a private landowner wants to expand his house or whatever. This is a publicly owned piece of property, and yet we're going through all this gyration and studies and everything. We may not, why don't we just say we don't want to sell the property? What is the driving force to sell it?
Well, the position of the district in the past has been to sell the land. In order to raise 10 to 11, order to raise 10 to 11 million dollars to fix the leaking sewer pipes. We are under a state mandate. It's called a cease and desist order. We're one of the few districts in the Bay Area that are under this cease and desist order to fix the pipes. So, you know, this district is up against it. We're up against some tough times here.
How were we going to pay for that
the former board thought they would sell a piece of the land, sell the land in order to raise some funds to help to fix the pipes. But the current board has not discussed the issue.
Well,
And to add, the land is not for sale. It would have to be a board direction. So like Frank said earlier, Frank and I here, it's not the full board. I do want to add that the land cannot be taken. It's public land and eminent domain cannot occur. So we don't have to sell the land. Nobody's forcing us to sell the land. It's up to the board.
Over here, yes, please.
Ms. Sisler again. You mentioned this is done at the state level, if we wanted to get things done. So who at the state level should we contact and say, get out of our lives?
A number of us have been doing that for a while. You know, we have an elected assembly member and an elected senator. Doreen Evans is our senator, and Mark Levine is our assembly member.
Contact them.
And I know Mark's been dealing with issues trying to get some of the potential density mandates reduced from 30 to 20 units per acre, but, you know, I mean,
What about Jerry Brown?
I can't speak for them.
What about Jerry Brown, and what about,
Well, Jerry Brown's our governor.
and what's his name, lives in Kentfield?
Oh, the lieutenant governor.
Yeah,
Gavin Newsom. There you go. There you go. Phone call to Gavin. Hey, Gavin, I'm your neighbor. Over here, let me get the fellow in the yellow hat, and then behind me.
I want to go back to that lady's question back there. I don't know if it was answered. She said that she was told by someone on the board that there's more than enough capacity. That's a yes or no question, and she wants to know if that's true. The second point I want to make is this. This vote and anything being done on this property should be put off till after the election, because two people are taking a hike. And if they vote on this thing, they're not holding the bag and they're not responsible. And so procedurally, whatever can be done to put this off so that when this vote is made, there's people standing that are going to be responsible and answer to the people in this room and the ratepayers. Those are 2 points I'd like to make, but this lady needs an answer.
The sale of the land is not going to take place in the very near future, because we, as a board, have to go through a public process to make that decision, and it hasn't been made.
Yeah, but we don't want to draft EIR approved and they're gone.
Okay.
Drafting the EIR doesn't mean that we're going to sell the land.
I know, but we don't want
We're just
to
giving
approve.
feedback.
We don't want to approve.
The draft is there's another process after the draft. So the draft is going to allow us to keep our options open to speak to the final, to EIR.
This lady needs an answer to your question.
Well, tonight, Pam and I can't give her that answer.
Well, no, the manager addressed it.
Okay. Well, we're going to get an answer, but we're not going to have it tonight. We're going to address specifically the capacity issues.
Other people that haven't asked a question.
Back, John.
David Baird, Larkspur. Yeah, it'd be nice to have the Sanitary Board District just recommend Larkspur to take their opportunity site 5 off the consideration and to express an intention to really recommit this property to the service of the town. I mean, there's countless things: public pools, sports facilities, amphitheaters, any ways that bring the community together. People are concerned that the previous attempt to sell the land for 126 condos and a 100-unit hotel resulted in basically a loss of almost $7 million of ratepayer money. Of course, I mean, the previous general manager, obviously, 9 felony counts. People are concerned about the deals that went on, how it was that we lost $7 million in a failed attempt to sell the land before. So let's just, cut our losses, and I mean, we don't really care about the money. We just want something that's going to endure for generations of, the Ross Valley community. And thank you.
But you're right, but the previous plan, I think, was for 126 living units, about 2 acres of office space, which would have been the Ross Valley Sanitary District, moving its headquarters from Santa Fe, where they went located, part of the building and remodeling, from Santa Fe back into Larkspur, and then the bottom portion of frontage of Ranch Street was going to be a hotel on 2 acres, roughly.
But specific to the EIR, though, there's also a concern that the specific developer, Campus Properties, one of their principals was included in the Citizen Advisory Council, and so there's a definite concern there about conflict of interest among, his specific vested interest in the land entitlements.
Okay.
So it would be nice to specifically, request that, that be noted, because it seems inappropriate.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Are you following your agenda?
No, let me get back to we've got to cut off the agenda. Let me get back to the agenda, and we'll try to zero back in on.
No, really.
Now, we've been here for 50 minutes. We're going to get back on this agenda, and you can ask your question as we're going through it, please. Okay. Let's see if we can get through this agenda. Because we're only going to be here till about 9 o'clock, we hope. We hope. So we're back to item number 3. It's discussion and direction of district view and comment on the draft EIR for the City of Larkspur stationary plan. So we've got the stationary plan details related to wastewater utility service. What have you been talking about? You've been asking questions about
we're on that agenda item.
Our capacity, our ability to service proposed development, and we've said we're going to get some specific answers for not only you, but for the city of Larkspur, because we want to be able to address them in a coherent manner, like we know what we're talking about. This is our system, and we need to be able to know whether or not we can handle the development. So that has to be answered, and you've been commenting tonight on that. The CEQA draft EIR for stationary plan, the analysis and conclusions related to wastewater utility services. And I guess a number of your questions are centered around that. I'm used to running a meeting kind of loose to give the people in the audience a full participation. Maybe different than other people run a meeting, but I figured the reason you're here is to tell us what you think. And sometimes board members don't like to hear what you're telling us, but I believe you have the right to say it. And so I'm going to try to hear everything you're saying, call on everyone, hear your comments, and we're going to take it back to the full board.
So
well, here's someone that hasn't spoken. This gentleman right here.
John Bacon in Kentfield. I have a question which has to do with capacity. I have not seen the draft EIR, but from listening to you, I understand that the draft EIR says essentially that there will be no problem as to capacity. Mm-hmm. And yet I am not sure that I heard Mr. Norby endorse that view. My question is, did the people who drafted that EIR consult with the staff at your sanitary districts? And it would seem logical that they drew their conclusions based on their conversations with the staff. And so my question is, if that theory is valid, did the staff indeed endorse that draft?
Very legitimate question. And I'm not sure, Greg wasn't here when they started this process. I don't believe Greg has responded to.
Well, I guess try to answer it. The timing on this is, well, let me try to be very clear on this. It's an important question. They reviewed the available technical documents for the district at the time that they were preparing the the draft EIR. And our planning documents in terms of the evaluation of the system and the capital improvement needs have been in a significant state of flux, for lack of a better way to put it. Meaning the district has been going through a major reevaluation of what the long-term capital improvement needs are of the district. So they did work from the available information. I can't speak to any detail of individual communications because I simply don't know of any. I personally I wouldn't call endorse or anything like that, this plan, but I'm not trying to pass the buck. My understanding is their consultant did work from the available information.
You mean the city of Larkspur?
Yeah, the city of Larkspur's
Not
consultant in preparing the draft EIR and reaching the conclusions that they did. And I want, maybe as a point of clarification, the stationary plan area, and everyone I think in this room is very familiar with it, it's a very, very small portion of the overall Ross Valley Sanitary District service area. Very small portion of it, and a very, very, very small portion of our overall demand. So when you talk about the system having capacity for this development, that's an important contextual fact to keep in mind. That's why I was mentioning numbers like we convey 40 to 50 million gallons per day, and this development at full build out is projected to produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 250,000 gallons per day. So you can do the math, it's far less than 1%, and the reality is the accuracy of the evaluation of our system at the, what I'll call the macro level, the backbone infrastructure, that's within the noise of our accuracy to tell you what the system can or can't do. So I have no reason at the moment to say that their numbers are incorrect. I will stress we haven't sat down and done an independent update of it. And second main point, they do say that when there are specific development proposals, because I think this is a very, I don't want to speak for the plan because it's not our primary focus as a district, it is a policy level plan in its intent. There are no specific development proposals, there are very broad levels of development, as you know from reading the plan. They do say that when those proposals reach some level of specificity in the future, and obviously that is predicated on a number of major, items that have to happen first, there would be an expectation that local infrastructure, meaning literally a pipe down at Country Mart or a pipe running down Larkspur Landing Circle, if that needed to be upgraded to handle the specific local development being proposed, then that would be handled in the normal fashion, same as, for example, the development here across the street and other developments. It would be handled when there was enough information to say, here's what the specific loads are, the pipe's too big, the pipe's too small, what needs to happen. So at this level of analysis, they've made some very high level conclusions, and I think they're about as far as we can go right now, but until you have a specific development proposal, it's difficult to say within that block what does or does not need to be done. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but I hope that kind of refines things a little bit.
Well, I guess my follow-on question would be, if, as you're saying, that you really couldn't give any real assessment of the impacts at this point, that the draft EIR that they have presented has no meaning either.
Well, I hope I didn't convey that point. That wasn't my intent. They have presented a set of what are probably, I would have to say, based on my initial review, planning level analysis and conclusions that do seem reasonable.
Well, they must have had some assumptions.
Yeah.
And you, I presume, but the staff were privy to those assumptions. And if the staff was privy to those assumptions, it's still not clear to me whether or not you could endorse them.
Okay, let me ask Randall as our engineer. I don't know if the consultants for the city of Larkspur contacted our agency, but maybe Randall might know. Randall, would you know whether or not they've come to us asking for capacity or capabilities of our agency to handle wastewater generated by the stationary plant? Do you have any sense about that?
Randall Oshie, District Engineer. speaking for staff and the history of what I can recall, the staff can recall, during the due diligence phase approximately a year ago, the specialty subconsultant performed due diligence, high-level reviews, and contacted the various staff members of the various agencies. Marin Municipal Water District as an example, Ross Valley Sanitary District staff. When they contacted Ross Valley Sanitary District staff, as part of the due diligence phase, staff referred the consultant to previously published and accepted district planning documents, such as the sewer system replacement master plan, such as the presidential sanitary sewer hydraulic evaluation and capacity assurance plan, and such as our existing capital improvement plan. They were also referred at the time to the fact that the district concurrently was under review by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and proceedings of a tentative cease and desist order were already in place.
And my question, on those plans and all, are those pretty much up to date? The information on those particular plans that we just enumerated?
Those are historic, those are basically, at this point, historic documents, Ben.
What is historic?
Meaning they were produced, for example, in 2006, 2008.
Okay.
And we're now working under, as you know, under the cease and desist order, we're working under the infrastructure asset management plan. But I think, well, not to speak for Randall, that's essentially what I was trying to convey. That's the information that we had available, and that's what their consultant utilized, was the planning documents and the information that we had.
So you all take...
The cease and desist order is something that we have to pay attention to. You know, the state could have put a moratorium on new hookups in Ross Valley Sanitary. They could have said, Ross Valley Sanitary District, until such time as you fix your pipes,
Right.
you will not be allowed new hookups.
They said about that.
They didn't do that. They didn't do that.
Well, they do think our
So,
I want to ask if this assessment, this history, if that included the almost 100 new units at Rose Garden, which no one's moved into yet, and also the 180 over here.
Right.
Does it include those, which together is almost 360 new units? Is that included? Did the consultant know about that?
well, you know, I'm not sure what the consultant.
I said that's really an important question.
But no, more than that. For instance, Fairfax is going to be 233 new units, according to ABAG. Larkspur 817, Ross 66, San Anselmo 368, County Unincorporated 296. So we're talking about 1,780 new units in the Ross Valley, not just Larkspur, but the Ross Valley that we're going to have to deal with.
But did the consultant consider that?
I have no idea what the consultants.
You have no idea.
How would we?
Well, who hired the consultant? Larkspur.
No, not us. No.
Larkspur. So
Larkspur,
you go to the
please,
Larkspur
please.
Planning Commission and pound on them.
The city of Larkspur.
Okay.
Okay. Regular, this gentleman hasn't asked a question.
Jeff Lapick from Kentfield, related to the environmental quality and the fact that this is an environmental impact report. Mr. Norby mentioned that we get high tide problems in our lines. I hope that some of the feedback and comment on this would be to make sure that people are taking into account the sea level rise that's predicted over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, which is going to be very dramatic in the San Francisco Bay.
Yes.
And there's no indication that remedial efforts are going to be enough to stop that happening. That's going to put an additional strain on the whole capacity of our system.
Now, I haven't seen sea level rise
I didn't see it in the
addressed
EIR.
in the summary.
It could be in the Larkspur
But
general
the
plan.
comments that the agency, that your district gives back could include
Yes, I put that on my.
asking for that to be done.
Yeah, no. Because I think they're changing those studies now, 50 years instead of 100. They're moving.
Right, young woman back.
You said that the questions about the 10 acres would be taken up, but that we have to get out of here by 9.
Well,
We've
you know,
already
I'm
pretty
just kind of hoping 9.
We've pretty much gotten to the idea that there is capacity according to technicalities, and that's not likely to be overturned. And it's not something that we here would really be able to argue or even consider. But what we can do here
is we can consider the 10 acres that the sanitary district owns right now. We can consider the level of cleanup there, the PCBs, and the amount of liability that the district would be taking on if they sold it. We could construct an argument about not being willing to bankrupt the district by selling such a property and then becoming liable for all the cleanups, a cancer cluster, whatever. And you are going to provide information about how much cleanup has been done. The question behind all this is, why hasn't the board, the sitting board at this point, considered selling or not selling? Because this is a major issue that has been here for years.
Let's try to answer that for you. We as an agency have been dealing with the Environmental Protection Agency on 2 issues. They have been on the agency over the toxics on the site. And we have settled one issue with them by paying some fines and penalties and agreeing to do certain amounts of remedial work over there. There's a second issue that is not resolved, and this board, full board, will be dealing with probably in the near future, because the EPA still has a mandate on us to clean the site. So, before we even discuss selling the site, we have to make the decision as to whether or not we think or we believe that the site needs to be cleaned first. And does it need to be cleaned even if we don't sell it? Does that site have to be cleaned? Do we have to excavate out the old sewer treatment plant, transport it off to an approved landfill site that can handle toxic waste, and then put clean fill back in there? Or, the EPA has suggested in the past that perhaps you could do like a cap and like a fill and a cap thing, where you cap over the land, and then everything's going to be out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to worry about it. But you're right, an issue could come out down the road 20 or 30 years from now. Should the property be developed for residential use? And should there be some adverse health impacts from the property that was not clean? The question of liability, I think, may fall on the district. This district, if it sells the site and it's not a
Everybody in the
clean
chain of
site,
title is on.
it's not a completely clean site, could be held liable down the road for damage, for health
And
impacts.
just so the
Pam,
public, just so the public knows, this has just all come about recently with the EPA. This was sort of hanging out there for a while, and I think we just paid off our fines to the EPA. Has that been finalized? Anyway.
We settled one.
This is just recent for the current board on why the PCB hasn't been dealt with and all that. So.
Frank,
Yes.
what this brings up in my mind is a need for first a overall financial analysis, a worst case scenario, so that everybody knows what it would cost to actually dig it up, transport it, and then do the cleanup that would alleviate the liabilities. That's the first number that I think the management of the agency should undertake this financial analysis immediately. The second thing, I think, is then once that analysis is complete, then a cost should be presented to the ratepayers for this, and it could be in the form of even an initiative on the ballot as to whether or not they're immediately ready to undertake that cost in order to alleviate the agency from this negative review from the EPA. That's the first thing I think that you need to do, those two things. And then the question would be, the second question is, once cleaned up and put in a condition where it was actually a marketable property without these adverse liabilities, then the next thing would be to get an appraisal on the property. And since this now is an asset on the balance sheet of the agency, to then ask the ratepayers if they are now willing to undertake a second expense in their fees, which is to remove it permanently from the asset column as a marketable asset to an unmarketable possession, as it were, that would be then made available for some potential future public benefit. Now, this is a two-step process, I think, that represents what I think would be the majority feeling of the people in this room right now. And I think it would be a very easy thing, particularly from a political point of view, to stand up for politically. And I think that the next candidacy, or for when you run for re-election, the whole board should really think about this as an issue to address completely as a comprehensive program, and then at least these 10 acres would be secure from the kind of development I think that most people living now in Marin are thinking to be a negative impact on the overall life of the people in Marin.
We've heard, there's been some numbers bandied about as much as $5 million to clean the land. You know, I haven't seen any specific proposal, but being on the board now since December 2010, there's some numbers that are bandied about. It's going to cost you $5 million.
How many ratepayers do you have?
How many ratepayers do we have? Well, there's about 50,000 people that live in the Ross Valley Sanitary District.
So would you have 20,000 ratepayers?
Yeah, probably close to 20,000.
This is doable.
Back there, gentleman back there.
Dave Kunhardt.
What I said, let's get back to the agenda here.
Yeah, Dave Kunhardt from Madera. So would it be better for the district to retain a roughly $5 million liability on its own books? Or, as was earlier estimated, achieve something of the $10 million market value to pay for the $5 million of cleanup, and have something left over to fix the pipes that this district is responsible for fixing at this point?
Well, that's what we're going to be faced with here as a board.
There's many options to consider.
There's some board members that have said maybe we should sell land at all. Maybe we should lease a portion.
Lease it out, and I've had developers contact me, if they want to buy it as is. They want what? They want to buy it as is. So, I mean, it's kind of like, there's a lot happening.
There's an uninsurable risk on it.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
I would say there's an uninsurable, what this man said really makes a lot of sense. But there's an uninsurable, non-delegable risk on that property. Everybody in the chain of title is on the hook. So you can have indemnity agreements, you can have all sorts of things, but that is not going to be binding on the principle that everybody in that chain is going to be in the chain of title, is going to be responsible from the toxic standpoint. So I just put that out there.
Good. Well, we've discussed with the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District the possibility of an interim use of the land for overflow parking for the Larkspur Ferry Terminal.
Great.
You know, I mean, so that there would be some public benefit of the land. It wouldn't be people living on the land, so we can deal with the toxics issue down the road. There'd be some small income to the district while it's there. So, I mean, that's the kind of things that we're talking about.
There is a major parking issue going on with the ferry and the park.
This young will point
Why
out.
why did the deal fall apart when we ended up forking out $7 million? Wasn't it due to the pollution?
Yes, it was.
The campus properties sued the district, and I came on like the night it was being settled. I came on the board, and maybe it was my next meeting a week later. And there had been closed session negotiations with between our former general manager, without a lawyer, and Campus Properties. And they brought back a proposed settlement agreement of $4.7 million. I think it was my second meeting.
This is a 10-year loss. 10 years.
But I thought that I read that it fell out because of the toxins in the ground.
That was the lawsuit. That's why they sued the district. They
Oh,
said
okay.
we were selling them.
So what's to think that it's not gonna come up again, and we're out another $7 million?
I happen to agree with you. That's okay. That's okay. A gentleman back there with a beret on hasn't spoken yet.
Did you say that developer only made a $500,000 down payment?
You know, I wasn't on the board. I can't really speak to what happened in the past. That seems that, you know, that's the deal they made. That's a previous board, so.
Right. But you think that's accurate information?
Probably is correct. So Pam and I were not on the board.
Well, no, I'm not blaming you at all. I'm just thinking that guy made out like a bandit.
I don't think so.
Okay, right here.
Down the real estate market.
Here's the wanted to get back to the subject that we're supposed to be addressing.
Yes, we are.
I would just like to point out, with all of the good discussion that's gone on, this good plan from this gentleman, please note that on the main description of this site, which is priority site number 5, page 6 of the executive summary, it says this site is suitable for a variety of uses, residential uses being particularly appropriate, and that hotel use and office uses are also possible. So it would seem to me that if you're listening to what's going on here, that your recommendation to your board about the EIR document would be that it's faulty. That it's what?
Faulty.
Faulty.
A little more
It's not
history.
consistent with what you're hearing tonight.
A little more history. This was prior to Pam and Frank.
I know.
And there's nothing about blame or whoever is liable, responsible, etc. Just this is how it happened. The district hired a planning consultant who developed a plan for, I think, 126 dwelling units on 6 acres. That was just about 20 units per acre. A hotel on 2 acres, and bringing the Ross Valley Sanitary District headquarters back out from Santa Fe into Larkspur on the other 2 acres. Then about 2.5 years ago, the board voted on a 3-2 vote. Pam and I did not think it was the right thing to do. They hired the same planning consultant to develop new plans. And that planning consultant developed new plans. And the planning consultant did not come back to the board, did not deal with the board, dealt with the manager, the previous manager.
Oh, God.
That planning consultant prepared plans to have up to 300 dwelling units on those 6 acres. Unbeknownst to the board, the district filed for a plan amendment with the city of Larkspur to raise the density from 126 to 300 on those 6 acres. Our attorney, in trying, we've been trying to make amends with the city of Larkspur because the Ross Valley Sanitary District kind of ran roughshod over the city of Larkspur in past years. And when the board changed a couple of years ago, we kind of said, it's time for us to make amends. We don't want to be at war with any agency. We don't want to be fighting with the city of Larkspur. So we kind of really changed our attitude about how we dealt with the city of Larkspur. And I think it was a step in the right direction because the city of Larkspur at least treats us, fairly. And so we actually withdrew that application to increase the density up to 300 units. We as a board withdrew the application from the city of Larkspur. They didn't charge us anything, they refunded all our money. That's just a little bit of history on how this whole thing has come about. It's not really been up front and out in the open. If you're hearing tonight maybe something you never heard before.
That's right.
But the fact is we withdrew the plans and we're back to square one. It's a piece of land that has an approval for 126 dwelling units, a 2-acre hotel, a hotel of 2 acres, and an office space of 2 acres. That's kind of where it legally sits right now.
With that included?
The toxics are there.
Well,
That's an issue we're gonna have to deal with.
Well, did the approval include the fact that there were toxins on the site?
Well, you know what, the approval doesn't address the toxics on the site.
And I looked through the EIR, I couldn't find anything in it about the PCBs, did you?
It's addressed.
Is it? Because I,
It's a little bit out of date.
oh, okay.
Frank, you've already answered part of your, when you said that the Golden Gate Bridge District was willing to take on this property for overflow parking, given the fact that they are now charging for parking, this is a revenue opportunity for
Possibly,
them.
I know, that's what we're looking at.
Now,
We're looking at
let me
that.
give you a quick plan,
We're
a
talking.
business proposal.
We're talking.
You go to them and you tell them, you give us the money to clean up the land, we will give you a lease on the land for X number of years, and then after that lease is expired, then what you do is you get additional revenue, lease revenue, you've already paid for the cleanup, you're now liability free, you get the extra money and you use that to bond indebtedness in order to fix the pipes that you're looking to fix. So you've got the property right now can be cleaned up, turned into an immediate revenue source to do the work you need to do and alleviate the liabilities that you have in front of you right now.
I doubt it that the Bridge District has $5 million to loan us to clean the land. It's great. It's nice.
But let's think for the other
You're
side.
thinking outside the box.
We're gonna go right here, yes.
Okay, first of all, we cleaned it up, then we're in a position that we might have it sold, and we don't want it sold. And the other thing is, you've got the cease and desist order, let that go through. They can't have any water hookups, we're home free, problem solved.
No, you know, there is no,
There's a health hazard.
they have not put a moratorium on their hookups.
Well, why don't we get a moratorium put on it?
Well,
Solve the problem.
Okay. In the back room, there was another question.
Okay, it would be a community service if you were to tell us the name of that planning consultant who was working on it.
It's in the minutes.
Well, it's public information, right? So it's public
If it's in the
information.
minutes, you could just share with
Well,
us.
you know,
We don't have to
we can dig it up for you, and I can email you the information about who that planning consultant is. We paid $48,000
Why?
to have
Guthrie.
Guthrie
And-
Guthrie and Associates or something like
Guthrie and
that.
Associates.
Guthrie.
And we did get, I questioned it because I was wanting to know. I think I was on a committee then and we'd only met once, and I really wanted to know what was the dialogue going on because I knew these advisory committee meetings were going on and I had gone to a couple of them and it was very contentious. So I started bugging the manager. We have this consultant, what is he doing? What is he saying? What's the feedback? You know, and the board wasn't really, and so I pushed, and we got one written report.
You got what?
For 48
So question everything.
I just want to get straight. Who's making this, you keep talking about Larkspur Planning Commission and you, should we all be descending on the Larkspur Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Who's going to make, who will listen to us?
Okay.
Do you make the decision about that or do they make it?
There are at least two public agencies involved, the City of Larkspur and the Ross Valley Sanitary District.
Okay, well, who's going to make the decision?
So that, Larkspur makes the decision. You know, that is their decision to make on the station area plan, whatever happens, that is Larkspur's decision. We are going to comment to Larkspur on the draft environmental impact report about our land, their land that we own down there, the 10 acres, and the potential uses, and some of the issues we have to deal with.
But you
The
have to
toxics
okay
on the-
selling it.
What?
Larkspur, you have the final word on whether or not you're going to sell it.
Oh, those 10 acres, yes.
Yeah,
Just
they're
10
districts.
Yeah,
They're
that's
our
more.
districts. They're your districts.
So that's only 250 units of the 920.
I think everyone should start getting the Larkspur Planning
Who has
Commission
the-
meetings on their agendas.
Who has the other 700 units?
Oh,
City.
No, so they're spread around.
Yeah.
70 units are at Drake's Landing.
All right.
I think 300 units are above the Larkspur Ferry Terminal parking lot, up above.
Is that incorporated?
No, it must be a city of Larkspur. But there's a whole.
Go to the Larkspur Planning Commission.
Yeah.
And the city
And-
council. And the city council. They're meeting tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. Tuesday the 22nd.
I was looking for the breakdown of the units. There's some at the, they're spread around. The Country Mart has a number of them above the commercial. Oh, you've got them there.
Yes.
Tell me what page.
Maximum residential units, 900.
I know the gist of it.
Yeah, is it breaking down by parcel?
No, well, it only does where it talks about these priority sites.
Okay, the priority site, and they list the number of units for each priority site.
The actual square footage and
Sure.
is on page 7.
So that's what we're trying to address tonight, the land and our capacity. A young woman in the back of the room has not had, yes. We just need your name and your town.
Pascal, and I live in Larkspur, I'm right over here.
Okay,
Given the time and given the fact that people are leaving,
yes.
how can we better help you get what you need in order to, in the next week or so, prepare the document for your board? So in other words, we've discussed a lot of things, it's been very fluid, it hasn't been really falling to the letter of the agenda, but with the remaining amount of time and the remaining amount of people, what salient points are left that you know about that we are unaware of that we can help you with so that you have something concrete and valuable to combine into a document to present to your board?
For me, I think reviewing some of the basic parts of the EIR, and when you first look at it, but if you look at it, there's certain elements that if you want to comment, you can send comments to me and Frank, because we will be coming back to the board to report what we've heard tonight. And this is being taped. You can actually get a copy of this tape if you want. And the board will just give you a copy. But there's other things, that we have that 10 acres. I mean, I'm an advocate of open space. I didn't hear open space talked about. And, or maybe they did, but I'm just saying whatever you see that affects you as a ratepayer, and we didn't talk about it or it popped up in your head later, send me and Frank an email.
We have a whiteboard. I'm happy to write stuff down, and if some people are more visual, I'd be more than happy to jot notes down so that the audience here can see what the other people are saying, and then maybe that can track it a little easier with the remaining time.
Is there a reasonable marker over there?
Great idea.
Those markers are
Go ahead.
Okay, great, perfect.
One thing I want to mention too, Scott Heath is Kenfield. Everybody in this room, most everyone, part of the Ross Valley Sanitation District has those concerns. Supervisor Katie Rice has a community meeting on April 26th at Bay Ridge School, from 10 to 11:30. That's a Saturday. And she's obviously a representative that Ross Valley Sanitation geographically involves and many of Kentfield's residents. And Larkspur, your representative is Mr. Kinsey, I believe. But I think the proposal plan for Larkspur Station Area proposal takes in parts of both Supervisor Rice and Katie's districts. I think it's very important she'll be there to speak with anybody that attends a meeting, as well as having Brian Crawford, Director of Planning, present there for technical questions. And I think it's time that technical questions come about and that all the supervisors are made aware of the overriding interest and concern for high-density housing and the Larkspur Station area proposal. whether it's in Katie's district or not, which I believe part of it really is. So please think about, please attend. April 26th, 10 to 11:30, Saturday. Thank you.
So, and Frank, if I could follow up that announcement just to say, there's a whole listing that some of us have compiled of events that are coming up around the bigness of the EIR, not just what you're dealing with as a sanitary district, but meeting schedules, meetings like Scott just mentioned, and some of the talking or writing points around the bigness of the EIR. So I've got maybe 3 or 4 of these copies, but I'll be here to take names and addresses or names and email addresses at the end of this meeting if you want to give me your card or an email address to make sure I can send this out electronically. And yes, to know tomorrow night the City Council is meeting, the Larkspur City Council at 6:30. So there will be public open time like tonight you had in your meeting that you could comment on this.
Is the EIR on their agenda, do you know?
It's not on the agenda, so you have to be there for the 15 minutes of public open time, and depending on how many of you are there, either you have a maximum of 5 minutes if there's not many people there, or otherwise use that 15 minutes to express as many points of view as you can.
There's also
Linda Swanson, Larkspur. Is your executive summary document available on your website? There weren't enough apparently to go around.
Okay, now you have to remember, it's Larkspur's executive summary.
Oh, it's Larkspur.
And that's all we have. We, you know,
And that's
printed it out for tonight's meeting. It is available on Larkspur's website, right?
In the public library.
We have copies.
Yeah, I know how to get it now. I know what it is. I thought it was there.
So now remember our 10 acres down there, what the stationary plan calls for is up to 250 units on our, but it's not 10 acres, it's on our 6 acres, which is the equivalent of about 40 units per acre. 250 units would be the equivalent of about, what, a little less than 1.5 wind cups on our 6 acres down there. So envision wind cup going over to our 6 acres of land that the Ross Valley Sanitary District owns. I mean, that's the kind of impact it's going to have in the Larkspur Landing area. I know above our property there are some affordable homes. No one's talking about the impact of a higher development it's going to have on their views, on the build, on, you know, there's a lot of impacts that need to be addressed, and hopefully we're going to get these impacts addressed when we contact the city of Larkspur, a consultant that's doing the environmental impact.
How many acres is Wind Cup?
Wind Cup is 4.5 acres, 180 units. We're 6 acres with 250 units.
Is that assumption based on selling?
No, nothing to do with selling. This is just their plan. Remember, it's not our plan. It's their plan.
Frank,
Yes,
did
please.
you tell me it's 382 units that ABAG is required for Larkspur? Did you tell me that?
No, the ABAG's numbers for Larkspur are
132.
Are 817.
Yeah.
817.
1999 to I just got this out from the IJ. 1999 to 2000 to 2006, 303 units. From 2007 to 2014, 382. And from 2014 to 2022, another 132 units. Now, I think the 83 or 84 units of Rose Garden counts towards Larkspur's numbers. Wind Cup is not Larkspur's. Yes.
What happens if we ignore ABAG?
I'm sorry.
What happens if we ignore ABAG?
Okay, we just need your name and your town.
I'm sorry, Jennifer's with Larkspur.
Okay. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen about ignoring ABAG. In Fairfax, Fairfax approved ABAG's quotas, and a number of us ran a referendum very recently in Fairfax. We gathered over 1,000 signatures in 12 days of people who said, no, we don't want to do this, or if we're going to force it, we at least want to have a vote on it in our community. Right now, the Fairfax Town Council is addressing the referendum, trying to see how they can get around it. But, you know, they're saying ABAG is requiring us to do this. Well, I'm not sure that ABAG has the law behind them and the ability to mandate a city or a town to do X amount of units. About half of the cities in California do not have approved housing elements, so it's not as if that, you know.
Really?
Cities,
Really?
You can withdraw from
city,
it.
yeah,
Well,
cities.
that's not our issue tonight. I'm just trying to ask a question.
This is a good question.
Yeah.
Because on April 26th, Supervisor Rice, that's a question that should be brought up to
Okay,
she as
okay,
well as
that's
other
that's
supervisors.
the-
You can withdraw, and maybe Marin County should consider being with that.
Okay, please, that's not our issue.
More like,
We're going to try to focus on the land and the capacity, that's it. Anything on land and capacity?
Yes.
Please, back to it.
Amy Willard again. Capacity question. So from what you said, the capacity numbers were produced by the consultants hired by Larkspur to develop the DEIR. And my question is, when it rains, you have a problem with sewage flowing into Corte Madera Creek, which is why you have a problem with the EPA. So when Mary Scylla came to our KWPOA board meeting recently, we asked her, well, what happens when it rains if you've added additional capacity to the system, additional demand onto the system, and there's more stuff in the pipes, doesn't that potentially cause more spills? And we were reassured, no, but it sounds like the only studies that were done didn't actually look at that question. Is that correct?
Probably the answer is maybe, rather than no.
But I mean, but as far as you know, the Ross Valley Sanitary District has never done a study of what would happen if it rains and there's extra stuff in the system.
We have data. We have a plan that we recently approved. It's a plan that we approved after the consultant for Larkspur contacted our agency.
Right.
So is their data up to date? Well, probably not. Would it change much? I don't know, but we're gonna include that in our comments. Our latest approved sewer plan.
Greg looks like he has something he wants to say.
Well, I think in the context that I've heard it discussed, it's the emphasis has been on the point that when you look at what we call dry weather flows, the wastewater that actually comes from a new building or a collection of new buildings. And when you look at that in the context of the demand that's put on the system during wet weather flows, again, that's if you put the improvements in place for the system to handle the wet weather flows, it's highly likely that the incremental dry weather flows of some amount of new, some specific development is going to be handled appropriately because you've put the system into place to handle 40 or 50 million gallons a day, when the normal flows, if we didn't have all this unintended stormwater coming into the system, would be maybe a tenth of that. So the context I've heard it put on is that if you fix the system to handle wet weather and actually stop putting so much stormwater into the system, you may have capacity to handle any of this future development, but we haven't done.
But the premise is that the system's fixed, which I know you're working really hard to do, but we're not there yet.
Correct.
So if this new capacity comes on and the system isn't fixed yet, are we putting more into Corte Madera Creek?
That's what I just asked at a board meeting.
What's the answer?
What did they tell you?
So the districts, just to be clear, the last comprehensive, what we call a hydraulic evaluation of the system, where you actually model the system and see how it handles the flows in real time, so to speak. That was the most recent, totally completed one was in 2006. And it was done, it's what's referred to, sorry to give you another acronym, but that's what's referred to as the SHECAP, Sanitary Sewer Hydraulic Evaluation capacity, something like that. So we are in the process of updating that analysis right now under, we literally just this month have finished the most recent flow monitoring study, where we've had 20 to 25 flow stations out in the system throughout January, February, and March. Unfortunately, we didn't have of course, a normal winter here, so we were able to monitor the significant storms that we did have during this last winter. It's going to be several months for that data to be downloaded and evaluated, and then it's going to be probably several months more than that before it's put into an updated hydraulics model of the system. And that will be probably the soonest that we'll get an opportunity to actually evaluate on a system-wide level any specific questions about, very basically impacts. I don't want to speak to meaning the draft EIR's analysis. They did not try to evaluate our whole system. They just looked at the station, the stationary plan, the Larkspur Landing area. So there is more information coming. I hope that made sense.
Thank you very much.
I think the kinds of issues that we're going to have to address by next week and get back to the city of Larkspur is any new development that's going to occur, we're going to have to look at issues like dual plumbing, so that the toilet systems can be flushed with treated wastewater. We're working on a program now with Central Urban Sanitation Agency to treat the wastewater to a higher level so that water can be moved around and could actually be used for flushing toilets. Embassy Suites Hotel and Alderdesk in Santa Fe, both those flush all their toilets with treated wastewater. So those are the kinds of things that I think whatever level of development is going to occur, they're going to have to be looking at and requiring and conditioning the development. Those are kinds of gray water systems. I mean, this is a new world out there, and it's time that we step into the 21st century and not just think you're going to get plenty of water in your toilet, you're going to flush it, it's going to go down the street and into the sewer system, and it's going to be treated, everything's going to be okay. We have to change our thinking here. But there's a comment. This Greg, we have here. Yes, please.
Yeah, I do. Laura Hupfeld from Larkspur again. Okay. I just want to say for the record, we're all here, and you have all these people attending a committee meeting just because we don't want high-density development. So whatever you can do to make sure that doesn't happen, we'll be happy to hear it. And you have two opportunities here. One is to stop development on your own property, and the other is to comment on the imprudence of the plans for the rest of the Larkspur Landing plan. And if you can do that for us, we're going to be very happy with you.
And we will vote for you again.
Yes, back with the break.
Yeah, you mentioned the possible effect of the views, if that piece of property was developed to the max of 250 units and so on. And I concur completely there. You have on one side the Brickyard, okay, that's an historical building. You have just up the street there the superintendent's house, also on the historical records. So I'm just thinking, what sort of cultural impacts would there be if a developer was to come in there and put all this density in there? Would that detract from our appreciation of these cultural resources? Quite possibly. And the other thing is that when that property was, or that whole area was basically redesigned, from the Dirty Harry days, if you guys seen that movie, just ponds, and the old gray wacky, gravel treatment plant. But when in the late 70s, the Citizens Committee of Larkspur got together and thought up a plan. It actually was a very good plan, and I talked to somebody who was on that committee, and she said that pretty much the citizens decided what they wanted, and then went to the Larkspur, and then Larkspur talked to the developer. I think it was Verona Pacific was the name that she gave me for the developer. But the developer did pretty much what the citizens wanted, except he wanted to include more area back up against the hills to the on the San Rafael side there, so that you could get more density. And those were where you see the highest buildings. But the whole thing was designed so that views would not be impacted throughout the place. And so that's why when you come in, from 580 on the east, there's such a glorious feeling. I mean, you say, this is Marin,
Yeah.
It's an adroit blend of open space and structure, and so easy to mess it up, is all I can say. It's beautiful now, so easy to mess it up.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, David Bear from Larkspur again. I just want to say I spend a lot of time right there. It's directly adjacent. There's a cooperative preschool. I work 2 mornings a week, and that's our babies right there.
Sure.
But obviously we share that with everybody. But I mean the town of Larkspur donated that land where this historic quarry shack is, and now serves as cooperative preschool. And I mean it's just that leadership back then in '84 to donate that land for that awesome community serving low cost, preschool is an example of something that where, the current sanitary board can that can have that enduring legacy, that they can be the ones that preserve the land and, really gave something that's, continues on for generations. I mean, there's so many different opportunities out there that really serve Larkspur in contrast to this opportunity site 5, which is really just kind of an Orwellian, opportunity for large, Wall Street-backed developers to put in, essentially, really dense rental housing, like a Wall Street rent extraction scheme, just like Wayne. So I think this is a real opportunity for the Ross Valley Sanitation Board to really cement their legacy and to really give something that people will remember, just like the preschool there, directly adjacent to it.
You're here.
Thank you. Earlier, someone brought up a map that had the 4 or 5 ponds that I guess have now been filled. And
Do you want it?
I do.
Where did you get that?
Yeah. Oh, this is off of Google.
Oh,
Both of these are
What year is that?
Google.
What
you
year
know how
is
long
it?
ago?
Sorry?
You know how long ago? How old are
I just printed them yesterday.
It's showing 5 ponds there right now?
It was showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ponds yesterday, so they haven't updated for quite some time.
Is there a
And
year on the
and
map?
the picture shows that it's all been graded and covered over.
Well, what's the
Yeah, that
year?
was 2 years ago. Those ponds haven't been there for 2 years.
This one, yeah, one is still left in the woods.
Is there one? Oh, maybe one in the woods in the far corner. There may be one.
Yeah.
Miwok Park.
Okay.
Do you want it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that on the preschool. I didn't know that. Good information.
Right there, right now. Okay. Right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. So let's. Yes.
I actually have a comment, and
name of your town.
Stephen Nessel, and I'm in unincorporated Marin.
Okay.
Live up I'm Marinwood.
Okay.
But I want to compliment both of you, the whole district, for conducting this meeting in an open fashion and listening to us. I can't tell you how much it makes me feel great about the people representing us. So thanks.
It's refreshing.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Jennifer Eastwood Larkspur. I just wanted to say to Pam, here's another one for open space, and I think something should be put there, but I think it's for everybody to enjoy. Open space is so treasured, and once it's gone forever.
Yeah.
We need something.
Yes. The land is covered with concrete.
Kathleen Mulcahy, Larkspur, and I'll second that. I worked for the Park and Rec Commission over in Concord many years ago, and I was a very strong advocate on that board in regards to open space, and took several stands to make what was available for the community to enjoy it. And I commend you, and I hope you're as able and supported by your constituents as well to make that a consideration.
Thank you. Yeah. You had a give a comment? No. Okay.
Frank, if you have 20,000 ratepayers and it costs $5 million, it's what, $250 a ratepayer? I think in a place that Ross Valley was in Ross, you somehow or another get this picture of some very well-heeled people up there in Ross. I mean, paying some multiples of $5 million for their home up there. So I think perhaps what you could do is float the idea. There's another idea is to float a let's put a fund together, or maybe
Let me tell you what's happening right now. We have a notice out to people that their rates could possibly go up to from $638 to $909 over the next 5 years.
Where I live, we had our rates go from $450 all the way up to $1,400. And that's what we've had where I live, to deal with that plant out there by Cavallo Point, which has gone under. So we have to rebuild the plant. That's our cost. So when I say 250, I'm talking Tam Valley is not as well heeled as the people who are living in Ross and Kenfield. So I think that what I'm saying is I'm saying a volunteer fund. You could set up a 501 something fund that these wealthy people could put their name to. And
you have to remember that not everyone in the Ross Valley.
I'm saying voluntary, but provide moral leadership.
Yes.
There's a lot of folks on fixed income here in the Ross Valley.
I'm saying voluntary.
You don't think that we're all wealthy.
No. I'm saying voluntary.
So Pam and I are going to take this back and kind of try to zero in on some of the issues that we need to get before our board. We've got a person here that's taking some notes for us, right?
And I want to add in the record, when do we need to notify Larkspur if we want an extension? Is there?
I don't know the answer to that.
So can we, can staff make sure, so if we want to extend it to get feedback, I don't want to wait till last.
Could you tell us who's running for the board?
Oh, that's got nothing to do with tonight's meeting.
I know, but.
No, we can't. You're going to get a ballot in the mail, and you can read who's running. I mean, that's not what we're about tonight. Yes.
Robert Elmer, Larkspur. One of the big differences of Marin compared to the rest of the state is we have so many districts of everything, school districts and sanitation districts and every kind of districts. I don't know how many sanitation districts there are, but there's
like 11.
A lot. And they could all be combined into one. But the reason they aren't is because everybody wants local control. We want local control, and you guys are our guys. So otherwise, we should just merge all of them and lose it because we don't have it anyway, if you don't represent us. And nobody here has said anything good about doing anything with that 10 acres except fix it and leave it open. So, or if not leave it open, use it for community value stuff.
Thank you. So, Pam, let's we've got to give.
I mean, there's another thing that really wasn't discussed last.
Speak up, please.
Affordable housing.
Well, I don't. Is a stationary plan? They're not really.
I don't think on our land they're
any affordable
considered.
housing.
I don't think they consider affordable housing. But that's another thing out there.
Okay, so we're going to make a recommendation to our board. We've talked about the possibility, Pam has mentioned, of hiring a consultant. I get concerned about hiring consultants all the time. We pay these consultants all this money. I think we can kind of zero in really on the issues here, and get a well-documented and coherent letter to the city of Larkspur asking, number one, for additional time to address the draft EIR, and at the same time point out some of the issues that are impacting us in the station area plan, the capacity issues. What kind of conditions should we put on any kind of development that's occurring in the Ross Valley Sanitary District, from dual plumbing public buildings to all kinds of things that could be done. We need to address the toxics on our sites. We have to let the city of Larkspur know what's there, what we're dealing with, the potential liability that we're facing. What else?
Well, we didn't talk about endangered species. I mean,
I don't know how well they, observed, and I looked at the report to that degree, but we didn't talk about that. So I think in doing this extension, I can pick through it really a lot more. I give up the consultant.
Good.
You really
I
feel
mean,
that way?
I'm not sure we can get a consultant on board that's going to be able to delve into this, go through the so-called process that, to date, and then try to come up with some national statements for us. I think we as a board could do it as well with our staff. We have excellent staff, and we could address the
If we have
issues.
staff to back us, because there's going to be some information that we're going to have to put.
Yes,
Okay.
as far as composing
All right.
the comment letter, absolutely.
Okay. Some of the questions.
Frank?
Yes,
Can
over
I
here.
comment on,
Please.
on the consultant? I'm a public servant, so I work with consultants a lot, and I gotta say that no one knows the system better than staff. And to bring in someone on board in very short notice and expect them to pick up all the historic knowledge, all of that, all of how things work, and write something that Larkspur can actually use, or the DEIR authors can actually use, is expensive, and you end up spending a lot of time managing them anyway. So to assign a staff member a couple of weeks, or however long you think it's going to take, to really focus on that, I think is probably money better well spent, because they're in-house, they know where to get the answers, they have a sense of how things really, really work. So I vote for if you can possibly manage.
And frankly,
Yes, Joe?
frankly, Frank, I think what you need as well is a land use attorney who specializes in this kind of law, because you have to know the nuances and complexities of the law, and given the amount of time that is left to respond to the DEIR. So you can look at this in one of two ways. You can hire a consultant, you can hire a land use attorney who can and both can analyze this and determine what the impacts are and how they're to be mitigated. Or you can just go with what the public consensus is, which is, since this is not a mandatory plan, we don't want it. And end the story there.
Okay, we have a law firm that.
But they're racking up $1 million bills every year.
I understand, they are. But, they have expertise in everything from land use to criminal law to et cetera.
Criminal.
That's a very good idea on the land attorney.
Yes, it
I like
is.
that. So maybe we can use that.
Yeah, I like my second point better.
Which is avoid the legal expense and just gift it to public space.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Quickly.
Yeah, Dave Betty again, Larkspur. I just want to say, you're responding to a consultant, an ABAG paid consultant, EIR. So hiring another consultant, anything to do with planning, again, they're going to be risking their career if they go against the ABAG agenda. So, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, no planning consultant is going to step out of line to this top-down ABAG agenda.
Because what you're hiring is a hired gun. Here's the result, get to it. That's how they work.
You know what happened at the county level with consultants.
Go ahead.
In Nevada, we hired a consultant, and the consultant was the one that created the plan for the high-density housing, all grouped together within a half a mile on Nevada Boulevard. They gave us headaches that we had never imagined that we might have. So I don't think the consultant is, I agree.
Because the consultant could address the draft EIR, and so could the land use attorney relative to the property outside of Ross Valley Sanitary District's ownership, because you still have to address that.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the property that the district owns, it's up to you what should be done with it, and it's the public's recommendation, nothing. Nothing should be done with it other than perhaps clean it up under an EPA order and make it open space.
Yes.
Yeah, and that could be part of our recommendation to the board, or at least we can tell the board the sentiment of those who attended this meeting this evening was that the district ought to maintain the property in public ownership and look for a better public use of the land than and we kind of develop what they're talking about.
And one last question, if this money is if the property is sold for purposes of raising money to fix the infrastructure, it's my understanding that the infrastructure's expenses to fix are $180 million. And if the current market rate that this is being advertised as going for is $10 million, that's a drop in the bucket in terms of the long range view of this property. It belongs to the public. It should be kept in the public's ownership in perpetuity, as opposed to a drop in the bucket to pay $180 million.
Okay. Pam, let's kind of do a little wrap up here.
Yes.
We've got our note taker. We're going to have to.
Volunteer consultant here.
Let's look at this. Okay, so reviewing, some of it's a little faded, but I think the capacity, the system capacity is and the PCBs are probably the two things that stand out the most. And then this hydrology model, but that would go into capacity.
That would be capacity, and we're developing this new hydrology model now for.
That's what you're.
And is that historic structure views? And the it's like a hillside or hilltop protection of some kind for historic structure views.
You want to translate, Pascal?
Well, I was just also sort of writing down what people were commenting,
Sure.
things that they liked. I mean, one gentleman said that he really appreciated coming up and seeing open space, open ridge tops. Another gentleman mentioned that the historic properties were of value to the community, and then of course preserving the views as much as possible. And there was lots and lots of mention of open space. If I could do this really well, it would all show up like things were bigger and the whole crowdsourcing thing. I'm not that good. Keep the property publicly owned / open space, and really you are a connection to local control. So please, remember your power. Let's see, and system capacity, basically storm runoff and user flow, and what is the max load for this, how to prevent spills into the creeks. And then the general manager mentioned the hydrology model and the evaluations on the current capacity is currently underway, and it's about a year off for total report. Is that about right?
It's probably a good estimate, sure. Yeah.
And then toxins, please stay transparent with the issues here, and including the cost of cleanup. In relation to eventual use of the land.
Can I make a quick comment?
Frank, you got a question?
Sure, please.
Frank? Just to, I didn't want to get into this prematurely, so the, just as a brief update, well, Frank and Pat already alluded, we for the past year, or about a year ago, we did revisit discussions with the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District on looking at a interim parking agreement for the site, for the reasons everyone is clear on. The reason that hasn't gone forward is because as we started that discussion, we realized that the what I'll kind of refer to as the PCB issue had not really been fully resolved. And what that meant was it wasn't clear that the site was suitable for the interim parking uses under the federal regulations on that type of thing. So starting in late 2013, roughly, we did enter into discussions with the EPA Region 9 staff in San Francisco, and those discussions are ongoing. But what they are, basically, the point they're at right now is that we're working on what we call a two-stage application to get clearance for the interim parking agreement, which might be plausible, or we're hoping it will be something that they can buy into, with some minimal improvements to address, things like rainfall infiltration and so forth, and make sure the site is suitable for the parking uses. And then there would be a longer-term second stage application to determine exactly what is needed to make the site suitable under the federal guidelines for long-term uses like commercial or residential and so forth. So that is in progress.
How many acres, sorry, how many acres is
Well, it addresses the site, it addresses the entire 10-acre site. We don't subdivide it in discussions on the site, it's just, you address the whole site. So the other thing for everyone's understanding is, I know the term PCBs and toxins are thrown around fairly loosely, and if it's of any benefit, we're not talking about the most common types of PCBs, which are your liquid PCBs from transformers and so forth that have been, that's a problem. And these are a problem, but what they are, if anyone's interested, is this is a solid particulate that is bound up in old paint. The paint was applied to concrete in the old wastewater treatment plant. When a portion of the demolished concrete was used to level some of the sites, that's what was left there. So these aren't soluble, they're not transportable, they're not bioavailable. They are bound up in the paint, which is bound up in the concrete, which is under the dirt. So the technical details of this were exhaustively studied during, unfortunately, in a sense, during the legal battles with the developer that led to the settlement. So there's a tremendous amount of technical work that has been done on the site related to the PCB issue, but it generally has not been out there yet because it was part of the legal proceedings on the settlement. All of that information, however, and the district spent a tremendous amount of time and money doing those studies, and the results of that are what we are utilizing in our discussions with the EPA staff. So there's a fair amount of already completed work out there, and we are expecting, based on their comments to us, we are expecting some kind of feedback from EPA on our application. We would have expected it by now, so I'll say stay tuned. Hopefully it won't be more than a few months, but it is a federal agency, and they move at their own, at their own pace. But that is where things stand at the moment. We are trying to get clearance for the near-term parking uses, and then get guidance and a clear path on what actions are required for the long-term clearance of the site. So that's just some updates on that activity.
Gentleman back there?
Yeah, I had a question for you. As far as these upgrades are concerned, you talked about $100 million and works that are going to have to take place. Is that part of the $17 million project in San Anselmo for the overflow, the flood control system there? That's in addition to that? I don't think
you mean Memorial Park?
Yeah, Memorial Park project. So this is in addition to that?
Memorial Project, that's a flood control issue.
So it's different.
The town of San Anselmo and the county of Marin, we happen to have some of our best pipe under Memorial Park.
Got it.
It costs us about $1 million to move it if that project goes forward, but that's not part of this conversation.
And then the other part I have that just kind of follow up is, if for example this $180 million that's being projected, is that going to go back to the people for a vote, or is because of this high density housing, is that going to be mandated that they're going to have to improve it without the vote?
Well, when you say back to a vote.
Yeah, I'm saying back to the people for a vote. Is it going to be on a ballot so that they know, just like, if a 2/3 majority is required to increase their taxes, obviously somebody's going to pay for that. Is that going to be brought back to the people for a vote, or is that mandated because of the high density housing that's going to be put up?
Well, I don't think we can really answer that question tonight.
It's a decision by the Larkspur City Council.
So, on the station area plan, that's a city of Larkspur decision. On the 10 acres at Larkspur Landing, that's our decision. On the capacity issues, we've got to give the final approval for the capacity issues. How much that's going to go on the ballot? Well, right now we're doing what's called a Prop 218 tax increase proposal. So all of our residents got a notice in the mail that the rates could go up X amount of dollars over the next 5 years. If they object to that, they have to put their name, address, parcel number, and sign it and say, I'm opposed to this rate increase. They have to send it to us by, I think, May 21st. That's probably about the closest it's going to come to a vote. It's a Prop 218 process. It's really not a vote, though. It's a Prop 218 process.
The only agency that you mentioned was the EPA. What about the regional Water Quality Control Board or whatever,
They're
the
the
state
ones
board.
who have a cease and desist order against us,
Right now.
right now.
Okay, so you don't
We're dealing
have,
with them on a regular basis.
they're the people, okay, so then the EPA is in addition to them.
That's on a 10-acre piece of land that has toxics on the site.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Okay,
Sid Baskin,
just your name and your community, that's all. Your town.
Sid Baskin, San Rafael.
Okay, thank you.
Lucas Valley. I just want to ask you a question. We've talked about the PCBs and the toxins. Is the contamination really pretty much limited or to the PCBs, or there obviously must be other significant toxins in there, or is there not?
My understanding, it's a very, it's much more I mean, I'm not an expert on it at all, and we've been trying, there's a literally a fairly good sized stack of technical work that's been done. The primary concern remaining at this point is the solids PCB that I was describing a moment ago.
Okay. So, yeah, because it seems like could be far more extensive.
Yeah,
than we're addressing here.
In my description, I don't want to in any way imply that that's not still a significant issue. I just wanted to clarify what we do know about that issue at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So,
I was assuming that it wasn't limited.
I would imagine we're going to have to do some core drilling down there.
Yeah.
And take a look at what's down there.
Yeah. So it could be a.
I have a question that is. Maybe Steve over there in the corner could help me with. I know out in Marin from the dry cleaners that was there for 40 years, that benzene seeped into the soil.
Not benzene.
What is it?
Methyl ethyl ketones?
PCE.
Yeah.
Am I correct in understanding that whatever it is that did seep into the soil traveled underneath 101 is now underneath Silvieri Ranch?
It's on the border of.
No, but how do we know the same problem is not happening on the 10 acres?
Well, we need to know if there's aquifers there, and water that may be underground streams that may be passing through and washing out. We don't know that.
So given this, it suggests that a study is necessary. So if a study is necessary to determine if that's the case or not, it would seem to me that it would be premature to go ahead with any plan for development on the 10 acres.
Yeah, up in Marin with the contamination from the dry cleaners up there really wasn't even identified or disclosed until we got down the road further on the thing. Originally they said there was some contamination, and then there is some benzene that's been detected in the environment there. But that they don't know where it's coming from. But the fact is that just recently you find out there's a plume that's approaching the wells and where they get the water for the workers and beat the cows out there over in Silvieri. They're on the other side of the freeway.
We could have the same thing happening with the 10 acres at Larkspur Landing.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of a contaminant.
I know.
Much different than yes, please.
I appreciate the clarity on the PCB specifics. I just want to note that it sounds like this worst case scenario, $5 million remediation, removal of soil, is based on a housing use. So if we can eliminate the housing use, it sounds like remediation can be perhaps simplified, and also legal liability could also be sort of put to bed.
That's
alternative.
Is that true though? If it's not housing, the remediation becomes much simpler. You said there's even for parking there's still remediation.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to try to comment on that honestly. I'm not sure. I think in general, levels of use relate to the remediation. So for example, if you're going to be growing crops and eating them, or you're going to be human contact with the soils, all those sort of obvious things. But I'm not qualified to. I really don't have the background to comment on it.
Should that be addressed in the EIR?
Yeah.
Maybe it should be. Maybe that we should be asked.
Certainly would support what kind of alternatives might be available.
Sure.
I have a question.
We'll put that in our comments.
Robert Neltner, Larkspur again. There seems to be something that's adding up, and someone brought it out already. There's a stack of technical documents that were done, the studies done in relation to the lawsuit, and yet environmental impact report, the draft, as someone's pointed out, says that this site is just fine for housing.
Well, obviously,
Obviously, those people, if that shows you
They haven't
something
read
about the depth of study that they, and we have from our manager here, that they did come in and look at the data, but it was the outdated data. What kind of questions does that raise about the entire draft environmental impact report?
I would imagine that they
tend to be they tend not to find many things wrong in these reports, at least the ones that Larkspur hires. I've been involved with this.
I would imagine they didn't look at the out-of-court settlement and data that went into the discussions.
So they didn't find the problem with building houses on that 10 acres.
So since this gentleman and I'm both from Larkspur, we give you total permission to go ahead and put that in your
That seems like a pretty strong point.
Yeah, the lawsuit's over, we can do that.
I mean,
Yeah,
It was
we have
locked
nothing to
up.
hide.
No, it's don't hide.
It's all public.
Please put it out in black and white. We as citizens will be very pleased.
these guys didn't look very hard to find problems.
Because if we're scratching our heads as a community seeing things, and you guys are representing us from this particular aspect, the more we are very clear about our uneasiness and our gut level feeling, the better we are situated for moving ahead.
And your Larkspur City Council is going to pay attention to you.
Oh, we're there too, believe me, we're all over, but you guys are just one nugget, but another nugget to this big puzzle.
Okay. Pam, anything further? You just,
I want to say,
two of us, we've all been taking notes too.
Yeah.
We're going to get our notes to Greg and we're going to try to get a report to the board in the next couple of days because our agenda goes out Friday. So you'll be able to go on the website and see what happens, on the agenda for next Wednesday night.
this is a little bit off subject, but there is a study out called TOD, which is the Transport Density. You might want to look that up. It talks about, it's pretty recent, I think, it talks about how these density developments occur and they address them.
What's interesting is on May 16th of 2013, less than a year ago, the city of Larkspur wrote the Metropolitan Transportation Commission with concerns about ABAG, the numbers, the one Bay Area plan. So I mean, Larkspur's they know what's going on here,
No, and
they've already expressed their concerns.
Through the Wind Cup, no, they're all addressed in the Wind Cup as well as far as their concerns. But we still are submitted to as borders to be able to.
I'm gonna walk over here and closer look.
Not in a
That work? Okay? I guess we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna adjourn then. I'm gonna walk over and make sure I've got all your notes down.
But I think we better meet one more time before the report goes.
The two of us?
Yeah, I do. There's so many community members here today, I think we should try to meet one more time before you go on vacation.
As a board? No, you told me before next Wednesday night?
No.
Oh, okay. No, after, we can do that.
Yes.
So I leave May 6th for Italy. We've gotten my wife through triple negative breast cancer, operation, chemo, radiation, and we haven't had a vacation for 3 years. So we're leaving the month of May. And, I won't be here for the May meeting, but I'll be back, we'll be back at the end of May. So, just to let you know, if you don't see me at the May meeting, that's where I am. We booked flights and we're getting out of Dodge for the month of May to celebrate no cancer. Mammograms a month and a half ago had showed no cancer,
So there's going to be another one just like this?
I want to do another one.
Well, perhaps Pam and I will do another one before May 6th.
Yeah, before he leaves.
Before May 6th. But we're going to meet as a board. We meet next Wednesday night right here. And I would imagine the board will listen to what we recommend.
Well, we're just going to report out at that board meeting.
Oh, I think it's a good, oh, we have it. Yeah, it's on the agenda. Oh. Got a report from this committee to the board, absolutely, oh, yeah. We're used to working under pressure, no big deal. Okay, so we're gonna adjourn, this meeting is adjourned.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.